Hi, thanks for joining us on a Sustainable Guys podcast. Coming to you from Dunedin, New Zealand. Tim Woods and Andrew Dine are the Sustainable Guys. Join us on a journey to discover what true sustainability is. This week, our discussion is an introduction to Tim and me, what our thinking is around the subject, and what might be done to help. As our knowledge grows, so will our understanding, so please bear with us. We are looking from our local perspective in the context to New Zealanders, but the same challenges are faced by all people in all countries of this tiny planet. This week's introduction video is the Washdyke Lagoon Wildlife Refuge. For our first episode, Tim, can you kick off with the first question? Obviously, I know the answer, but who are you?
Well, Andy, I'm Tim Woods, and I'm an environmentalist. I'm proud to say that. Over many years, I've always loved nature. I've always loved the beautiful planet that we're lucky enough to live on. And I'm concerned that we don't have a sustainable future. And I've become one of the sustainable guys because I think we can all make a difference, and we in particular have some plans that we think are going to make the world more sustainable, make it a better place. So that's kind of who I am. I have grown-up children and also a young boy who I see his life ahead. What does he have when he's my age? You know, what's the world going to be like? Is it even going to be, you know, recognisable from what we see today? So, yes, I think we need to really think about the future and care about our environment a lot more. And I think we'll discuss that today.
Well, about me, I'm probably becoming an environmentalist, which 10 years ago, if anyone said that to me, I probably would have responded probably quite strongly, saying I'm not an environmentalist. I'm more of a free market type person. But yes, I think I'm becoming an environmentalist. I'm seeing how everything's connected, and it's really hard not to consider the free market and consider environmentalism separate things these days. So yeah, I'm becoming the environmentalist. I don't know if I'm a fully fledged environmentalist yet. I'm still forming my views, but yeah, probably on my way. And hopefully we can bring more people on that thinking as well. Myself, I've got three kids with my wife, and one's at university. Two are hoping to do something after high school, hopefully further their education, but that's their choice. And yeah, like to think I've raised three global citizens who have quite an open, understanding, caring view of the world, but you don't really know until they're adults and they're making grown-up decisions on purchasing vehicles and buying houses and what path their future life takes. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I'm sure as the series go on, we'll find out more and more about each other and our viewers or listeners. If you're listening to a podcast, we'll hear more and more stuff about us, personal details and new experiences. So why start doing the series, Tim?
Well, I think there's a huge amount of space in the sustainable area. It's interesting that we've managed to register our name across pretty much every social media platform, and yet we're supposed to be living in a world of sustainability. I think there's a lot of that at the moment there's a lot of talk, but very, very little real concrete action that's going to really change the world for a more sustainable and long-term future. And when I say long-term, I'm not talking 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. It would be nice if humanity was around for 1,000,000 years. And at the moment, we can't really see a horizon much more than a century ahead.
Well, a horizon that involves us living this incredible lifestyle that a small percentage, 10% of the global population live at the moment. Yeah, there's probably going to be humanity. And
so I think we're on a journey. We've got some goals, which we'll talk about in other episodes. So we've got ideas about sustainable energy and, you know, a sustainable future. And I think we're doing this because everybody who can educate, can inspire, can actually do something, however small it is, will help make a difference. And if you think about the national parks that we're lucky enough to have in New Zealand, but then look at the vast amount of the country that was just clear felled of all native bush, all native forest, and there were a few inspired individuals 100, 150 years ago who, through their actions, mean that we still get to enjoy some of that primordial boreal forest, and some of the amazing creatures that could have become extinct but are now showing some resurgence in, you know, the inland sanctuaries and on some of the islands off the coast. So environmentalism and sustainability, there were people 100 years ago who have made a difference to our lives, and what we're doing will make a difference to our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives. And if we don't do something, I hate to think what future they have.
Well, we got the name the Sustainable Guys, but I do know of there's a number of podcasts out there and small groups that have other common names. But I take your point that like the Sustainable Guys, it's a very almost an over obvious name for somebody who wants to promote sustainability. So being 2021, I was shocked when you suggested let's go with the Sustainable Guys, and I thought that probably went 10 years ago. 2021, the Sustainable Guys are still available. So across basically every major social media platform, the .com, readily available. For myself, doing the web series, well, as this is our attempt 4 at episode 1 through one technical difficulty or another, we've had some trials. Just even in the first 3 attempts of sitting around the microphone and recording blurry footage, my view of why we're doing this web series has changed. Some of the conversation, and I may have time to review it at some point and put some snippets together of episodes 0.1, 0.2 and 0.3 together. Every time we start this conversation, my view of why we're doing this web series changes. So why I'm doing it now, or why we're doing it now, for me, it's the more you look, the more you find. The more you find, the more concerned you get, and the more concerned you get, the more you look. So it's this iterative process of just stepping through a cyclic thought pattern, and perhaps not getting more concerned, but just becoming more aware of what options people have, and we will discuss them over the web series, as we discussed in episode 0.3. you mentioned veganism and low carbon food, and that's something that I had never thought of before. What are our motivations? We've probably touched on that a little already, but any specific motivations for doing this web series?
I think when I reflect on the amazing little blue planet that we live on, and we're fortunate enough to live in an incredibly beautiful and scenic part of New Zealand, and New Zealand's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. But when you see that little blue planet from space, and you think it's been there for 4 billion years and we've evolved, and you know, the human race is the result of that 4 billion year journey, and inside a generation we have the ability to completely potentially destroy that pristine and wonderful home. And there's people demonstrating, there's people tying themselves to, you know, oil rigs and those kinds of things, which they do raise awareness. But I think what we're trying to do is, beyond what raising awareness, actually go out and do something. So I'm highly motivated that, we're not going to sit around or, you know, pay $5 a month subscription to Greenpeace. We are going to go out and make New Zealand, and starting in our home city, a truly sustainable place and a model for the rest of the world to follow. So when people say, oh, we only account for 0.03% of greenhouse emissions, blah, 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 and, you know, if we stopped emitting anything, it would be the equivalent to 2 weeks of Chinese increases, or something like that. I think they're missing the point.
A heavy day on a Californian motorway.
New Zealand has an opportunity to be a model, and we might be 100 years ahead of the rest of the world, but that's what
my motivations are, so the introduction footage of a flyover of a wildlife refuge. One thing you don't see in that footage is my wife and I were walking along the beach afterwards, and I was looking at the driftwood, and I know that there's environmental groups and school groups and community groups that go out and pick up get bags and pick up rubbish, but the drift plastic that was amongst everything. Now, it's the west coast of the South Island doesn't have a high population base. Sorry, the east coast of the South Island, that's where I am, doesn't have a high population base. Yet there was plastic everywhere. There was fishing line wound through stuff that is gonna get to the seabirds at some point. And again, this is a place that's regularly combed. It's stuff that's just drifting down the east coast with the overall average tidal movement. I was kind of blown away by how much plastic there was. So that's one of the motivations. I didn't used to think that we should be looking at that. We should just be looking at the big lower CO2, the big things that we can do. But for everyone who tips a bag of rubbish into a stream thinking that it's gone, it's not gone. It's going to be there for a very long time, and it's going to come back. And if everyone's doing, well, not everyone, if 1 in 1,000 people are doing that, that's enough to cause a problem. So motivations to just get people to think about the outcomes of their actions, the long-term outcomes of their actions, I think. So
I remember it was actually a Packaging of New Zealand conference, and I actually had a guest speaker along from the Sir Peter Blake Trust. And during this meeting, the producers of packaging in New Zealand were proudly proclaiming, recycling had gone up and this had gone up, and we were now recycling 30% of this and 40% of that. And this guy from the Sir Peter Blake Trust, who'd been brought along as to challenge the orthodoxy, said, yes, it's all very well, but during the period that your recycling has gone up, your total usage of plastics and packaging materials has actually doubled.
Right. So you're yeah.
Even if you were recycling 50% of everything and everything was wonderful, you're the equivalent of what you were 10 years ago. And if you just look at the total abomination of plastic packaging in virtually every product in a supermarket, like these little cheese dips with a plastic bowl and a foil top.
Yeah, rip and dip, and it's got a little plastic and some crackers
Those things are not remotely sustainable.
No.
Just the sheer value of that kind of packaging.
Yeah.
So we're looking at energy, but every component of our current society doesn't actually truly compute the cost of the materials we're using.
Yeah.
So with plastic, if the cost of the plastic waste and the damage to the environment over the next 10,000 years was taken into account, we'd probably stop using it because it would cost too much.
Yeah.
So
the atmosphere and the landfills are a subsidy for our lifestyle. Yeah. Okay. So that kind of is well into the next question. Aren't we doing enough already to continue to be sustainable? No.
Well, I would ask the question, what are we doing towards sustainability? So
we stopped using plastic bags. We stopped using one-use total carry plastic bags at the supermarket. Everything else is in plastic bags, but...
And I think we discussed this before, that although it really makes almost zero actual environmental difference, and some would argue that it's a step backwards because the polypropylene supermarket bags that we now all carry, multiple times more plastic content and will never break down easily. The ban does make us think about
correct. Yeah.
How convenient that plastic was when you didn't have to remember to take a bag with you to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Just little simple things like that. So I don't think the ban's going to change the planet, but it does at least make us momentarily think.
Yeah. So every time we pick up one of those bags to go into the supermarket, we should be thinking, what else don't I need that's in plastic?
Well, is there any product that you can buy in the supermarket other than... No, I'm trying to think.
Free flow oranges.
But everything you buy in the supermarket goes into a plastic intermediary product.
Yeah.
So if it's fruit and vegetables or any fresh produce, it's wrapped in plastic.
I must say, I saw a couple at the supermarket the other day, and they actually had on the trolley, on the conveyor belt, they had moving around lemons and oranges and individual pieces of garlic and a piece of ginger and something else, and it was all, they just put it on the trolley, and the lady at the checkout was actually picking up the lemons to weigh individually, and they carried them out without going into an individual plastic bag. So there are some champions out there. We just all need to be like that, don't we? yeah, that's the first time I've probably ever seen that. So yeah,
are we doing enough? I'd say if 100% is enough, we're not even at 1%.
yeah,
That's the reality. If you take plastic waste, our food waste, our lifestyle, the way we are using fossil fuels, which is stored sunlight, as if there was no tomorrow. To be sustainable, let's just pick a number. Let's just say 1,000 years. Forget the million years.
yeah,
Forget even 10,000 years. Let's just say 1,000. Over the last 50 years, plastic pollution in the ocean has increased thousands of percent.
yeah,
The number of cars in the global car fleet have increased thousands of percent. This is in 50 years.
yeah.
So where are we going to be in 2200, 2300, 2400?
Yeah,
Are we going to be buying little cheese dips in PET plastic with a high-tech foil plastic lid?
yeah.
Are we going to be buying a few grams of crisps in individual packs in foil?
Individually wrapped crisps. Yeah.
Well,
So, I know it sounds silly at the moment, but
wrapped capsicums are
yeah,
appearing.
yeah. But when you look at those little snack bags of what's in there? 20 grams, 30 grams. That's pretty close to individually. Yeah. No.
20 grams.
Yeah. Though.
So are we doing enough? Just tell me, out of the 100%, what can you tell me one thing that we're doing today that will be quite comfortably sustainable in 100 years from now?
I can as individuals, but not as a society. There's a few positive things happening overseas with cities banning some internal combustion engines in certain inner city areas. So you're relying on batteries or public transport, and some of that public transport is carbon neutral public transport. But yeah, as a global society, or as a country.
Just take one of the most basic materials that we take completely for granted in virtually every part of our modern society: concrete.
Yeah,
every ton of concrete, I can't remember the exact number, but it's many tons of CO2 are emitted in its drying and manufacture. We use millions and millions and probably billions of tons of concrete globally every year, and it's something we totally take for granted. Without coal or fossil fuel, could we even begin to make the amount of concrete that we take for granted? A multi-storey building made out of steel and concrete. Again, steel that we take for granted because we make it with fossil fuels. There aren't enough trees on the planet to burn to make the current consumption of concrete and steel that we take for granted.
Yeah.
You look at some of the tech titan companies that have built, like Apple, that giant circular headquarters in California, and they may have all sorts of green ideals and everything else, but the reality is it used steel and concrete and glass and so how can we still be making steel and concrete in 100 years? Forget global warming, the fossil fuels will become rarer and rarer and harder, and more energy will be required to extract them, to a point where it becomes not worth extracting the last few tons.
So
are we doing enough? Are we at 1%?
Perhaps some future topics are picking perhaps an overseas steel manufacturer who is actually using carbon neutral, and I have heard of a few who are moving towards hydrogen. And once there's the ecosystem, they'll move to green hydrogen. I believe there's one that's trying to get off the ground in Germany, but again, the price is probably going to be considerably higher. So when that steel gets to market and a company buys that steel to make their building to produce goods that we buy, the cost will be more. But we need to be aware that they are using sustainable steel, so consumers can actually support their product, because I think that's where it starts and finishes. People who have the capacity to buy even a semi-green, a light green, a lime green, something that's just better than the other products, we need to be aware and we need to be able to commit. We just can't walk in and go, well, that looks prettier today. We need to buy the product to reinforce that the world thinks that it's worth using that product and it's worth doing it that way.
Yes, I mean, I think another, and this is a big elephant in the room for New Zealand, although probably not so much at the moment, but unfettered tourism.
Yeah.
All those tourists arrive here in great big gas-guzzling, fossil fuel, CO2 generating jets. There's so many things that we have, they're almost sacred cows. Interestingly enough, since the borders have been shut in New Zealand, I think our quality of life has actually gone up.
Yeah.
We were like a giant theme park some of the time. It's actually nice to have this beautiful country to ourselves, and we're very lucky. But there's some real fundamental things that all this 2030 and 2050 and we'll be carbon neutral, and then you look at a cruise ship that weighs 100,000 tons of steel.
Yeah. It's got some rather big marine oil engines running on it continuously. Four or five massive chimneys poking out the top, so the
engines on a cruise ship are like a power station in their own right.
Yeah, but could you imagine if those chimneys were shorter? The exhaust pipes, because that's what they are, exhaust pipes sticking out the top. If they were shorter, so the people on the cruise could experience some of the lovely gases that are being pumped into the atmosphere.
So we talk about sustainability, but it's going to also involve some real tough choices for a lot of. And I don't think we're going to be like an Al Gore flying around the world in our private jet and having.
Saying you be sustainable, yeah.
I think we all collectively have to start really thinking about our lifestyle and what things can we do and what things are going to happen for the word sustainability to even mean anything.
So I saw I was listening to a podcast today, and part of the conversation was Airbus has 3 hydrogen fueled jets in their design system. If we ever get to an economy based on a carbon neutral fuel, can you see flying around the world in a hydrogen jet that's composite material that has been made in factories that run on green energy? Is that an acceptable place to be, or what will the effects of that be in the short and long term?
I think if we're talking real, true sustainability, and let's go past the 1,000. So people say, oh well, with nuclear energy we've got 1,000 years of power. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens in 1,000? Now, we tend to think very short term, but would we be comfortable knowing our species is going to disappear in 1,000 years? I don't think so. So we have the technology to produce renewable energy, electricity, the hydrogen economy, those kind of things. But it's not going to be, you're not going to be burning 3 tons of hydrogen to make a ton of steel and charge $300 for that ton of steel, or however much a ton of steel. You know, like the true value
will be recognised.
And the true value of concrete.
Yeah.
The true value of steel and rebar.
There'll be no environmental subsidy that we're not currently paying.
So I think air travel will still exist, but it will be a extreme luxury.
Yeah.
And if it's, you know, if every part of that aircraft had to be made from environmentally sourced materials, so the aluminium from electric, hydro, any other part of that aeroplane is made from a hydrogen based or a solar or whatever.
All the laminated glass and the wind and the windscreens up front where the pilots sit, all of that is 100% renewable.
Then that aeroplane will cost 10 times what it costs today.
Maybe in the short term, maybe in a transitionary stage, but in 100 years' time, will we be back down where green energy is so common? Like we're at a stage where to make green energy, there's a big long process, but
at the moment the green infrastructure is still being created through huge use of fossil fuels. Even if you look at silicon in solar cells, and it's made by mining silica
and then burning coal,
huge amounts of coal to convert it to industrial grade or whatever grade silicon. Without the coal, we're going to have to burn something. So, but every part of the energy, and don't forget that your wind turbine, your solar cell or whatever, has a 20, 30, even if it was a 40-year life expectancy, it will need to be replaced.
Solar cells have got considerably good life expectancies these days, but I know what you mean. Even if it's 70 or 100 years, it still needs to be.
It's not going to be going in 1,000 years. So
and the next iteration won't be a coal-fired plant that makes the solar panel. It'll have to be a green powered plant that makes the solar panel. And what is the cost of that solar panel versus just being able to open up a big hole in the ground and pull fossil fuels out? So complex question, complex answer.
I think ultimate sustainability is, and I go back to where I started, we're at 1%. It would be nice as a result of our series and our passion that we get to 5%.
5.
That would be
bold.
Huge.
Yeah.
And if New Zealand could be the world leader in sustainability, and with a small population and a lot of natural resources, especially solar natural resources, then it's a very real possibility that New Zealand could become truly sustainable. But I'm saying from 1 to 5%, to get to 95 or 100%, people have just got no idea. There won't be any plastic packaging in the supermarket. They'll be going back to bin in, or whatever. You'll be going to farmers markets.
All of the jars will need to be recyclable if you want to be able to afford it. There'll be value in a jar, not something that you throw in the glass recycling bin to be made into something once and then thrown away permanently. But there will be value in a jar. You'll be able to return a jar for credit if it's in good condition.
But I'm still saying, and as part of this journey, let's really, you and I, explore what does 100% look like. That's an interesting thought.
It's the first time that's come up in the previous 3 conversations that we've had. Yeah, what does 100% look like?
What does 100%
Yeah.
sustainable society look like?
Yeah.
And think of it in terms of the calorific value to produce the steel, the concrete, to build your replacement wind turbines.
Yeah.
How much of
your replacement double glazing in your new house?
How much of the wind turbines life cycle energy production is taken up with the actual cost of building the turbine?
Yep.
But also the concrete base of some of these turbines is hundreds of tons, if not thousands of tons. If they dig a huge hole, sort of 100 feet deep, and fill it with rebar, steel and concrete.
Yeah, I can see that question. What does 100% look like? And I'm gonna write it down afterwards. Any comments from listeners would be great, because it's going to have to be very, very original and diverse thinking to get to 100%.
And we're talking 100%.
Yeah.
A sustainable lifestyle.
Million years. Yeah.
Even if you...
1,000 years. Yeah.
Even if you took the 1,000, if you look at our population over in Australia, the Aborigines who had a successful society for tens of thousands of years, I'm not sure how long, but we think of ourselves as so civilized and clever, and look at our beautiful cities and everything else. But at the moment, our chance of having 10,000 years is not any hope of that happening in our current environment and our current lifestyle. So yes, let's really find out and ask some experts. What does it look like? What does 100%? And there will be a nuclear transition, I'm sure that's going to have to happen. But over the next 1,000 years, when that nuclear energy finally runs out as well, what does humanity for the next 9,000 years? Let's see if we can get to 10,000. I mean, you're laughing.
No. It's not a humorous laugh. It's the idea when it dawns on you. What do we need to do? That's more of a sigh of my word.
Our short-termism is just mind-boggling. Like we're going to have to pay more for electricity, but as soon as we start having to pay more for electricity, people start complaining because it's going to have a major impact on our lifestyle.
So we need to be.
Do we even have the same level? I mean, this podcast is going to use gigabytes of data.
Exactly, it's going to be stored on a server somewhere with a triple backup diesel generator on a data center.
Every time someone watches it, that data center is going to be needing to be cooled.
But is it a plastic bag at a supermarket to get you thinking about what you should do? And I think that's where I think it is. There's some things that they use additional energy and additional resource to do, but you've got to do something. And doing it in this format, if we were to get in a car and drive around New Zealand and have town hall meetings and bang a podium a few times, I think that would have much smaller reach and considerably higher environmental impact. So,
we're on a journey. We've got ideas and we've got plans that we're going to explore as this podcast and this series progresses.
So wrapping it up, the very last question, and we'll try and keep this one short, not a yes or no answer, but is the world going to end soon?
The world isn't going to end soon. I mean, the world is going to eventually
collapse into the sun. Well, the sun's going to expand out and consume us, but next 100 years that you keep on hearing about, that we've got 10 years left, and we've had 10 years left for a decade now. So
yes, and maybe that's that we've got 10 years. We've got 10 years, but every 10 years we wake up and we're actually in a much worse place than we were 10 years earlier. We've got a lot more people on the planet, where as we get richer, and an interesting article I think I may have emailed it to you, that per capita Chinese people are now using 13 tonnes of carbon a year. They're not quite up to the Americans at 17.1 tonnes of carbon a year, but there's 1.4 billion Chinese, and they now account for 27% of all CO2 emissions.
And I read a countering argument about that, how America over the last 18 months, their CO2 emissions have decreased, and that is mainly because they've outsourced all of their carbon-rich production. So China's kind of in a situation where everyone sends their dirty jobs to them.
This isn't.
Yeah, I know.
This is not a criticism of China, because there's a huge amount of hypocrisy of us saying, "Oh, we're green."
Yeah.
And now we still need steel, by the way. Oh, let's import it from China. By the way, made it with fossil fuels.
And our smartphone components and everything come from there as well. And New Zealand sitting there. So the worst thing we're doing is spray drying milk powder. And they're making plastic and glass for our smartphones and laptops, etc. So
the world is not ending in 100 years or 1,000 years, but the world that we have become luxuriously used to is going to end, and it's going to end either with us making the necessary changes towards true sustainability, or it's going to end possibly quite horribly.
And on that final note there, I think we can wrap it up, Tim. Hopefully it doesn't end too horribly, but it's been a great first podcast. Cheers. Don't forget to visit sustainableguys.com to stay up to date with our journey. Proudly sponsored by Sustainable Hydrogen New Zealand Limited, building sustainable green hydrogen hubs. With sustainable hydrogen, it's green hydrogen or nothing. Thanks for joining us on our Sustainable Guys podcast series. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with Sustainable Guys events. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok as the Sustainable Guys. If you would like to discuss anything in future casts, please comment below or fill in the form at sustainableguys.com. Thank you.